All right, so previously in this chapter, we've talked about surface area of prisms, cylinders, pyramids, and cones, and then volume of right prisms, cylinders, pyramids, and cones. We have one shape left today. That is the sphere, and we're going to do surface area and volume of spheres in one lesson. Surface areas is actually the easier of the two formulas here. Especially they're going to have us working the volume formula backwards, which is going to require a little bit of calculation there. But let's just look at some of the vocabulary we have here going on. We're still dealing with radius, a segment that has one endpoint at the center and the other endpoint on the sphere. So we still the same as a circle. The radius is still the same. We also have diameter. Diameter is a segment passing through the center with the endpoints on the sphere. So radius and diameter, still the same idea that we had in the circle, nothing different there. There is some new terminology when we get down here. We have what's called a great circle. If you cut the circle in half right at the middle, what you have there is called a great circle. It includes the circumference of the sphere, or of really the great circle, the circumference of the circle. The circumference of a great circle is the circumference of the sphere, okay, because that's at the very center. And then we have a great circle divides a sphere into two hemispheres. Hemisphere is simply 1/2 of a sphere. Where have you heard the term hemispheres before? Oh, please tell me we've heard hemisphere before. You know the Earth is divided into hemispheres. A northern and a southern hemisphere. Which one do we live in? Northern hemisphere. Thank you. We live in the northern hemisphere. What divides the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres? The equator. Thank you. At least one person is up on their geography. The equator is what divides the Earth in half, basically. So if you look at the equator, the northern hemisphere obviously is north of the equator. The southern hemisphere is south of the equator. I don't even know if I should ask this next question. Then you're aware that the seasons are opposite for the two hemispheres. Since we're in spring right now, the southern hemisphere is in what? Fall. We're going into summer, so what are they going to be going into? Winter. The seasons are opposites. Now, obviously, the closer you are to the equator, the less the seasons matter because it's just warm year-round pretty much. Okay, the closer you get. Just like in the United States, the higher we go up in the United States, the weather gets colder and colder because they're getting further and further away from the equator. All right, so on the next page of your book is the actual formula for the for the surface area of a sphere. And surface area is 4 pi r squared. On the previous page at the bottom, they took a baseball and they cut it open. And when they cut it open and laid it flat, there was 4 circles. So that's where the 4 pi r squared comes from. 4 circles, pi r squared is the area of one circle, so we're going to find the area of all 4. So as long as I know radius, I can find the surface area of a sphere. So in this problem that I'm given here, you don't have this one in your book. I have this 10 meters, but that is my diameter is 10 meters. I have to pay attention because I only need my radius. Since my radius is half of my diameter, that means my radius would be 5 meters. So surface area equals 4 times pi times radius squared. surface area equals 4 times pi times 5 squared. 5 squared is 25 times 4 is 100, so surface area equals 100 pi. I look back at my directions and it tells me to leave my answer in terms of pi, so I just need to add on square meters. Some of the questions today are going to ask for pi and some are going to ask for us to calculate them out. It just depends on what we have going there. So let's go ahead and look at your question in the book. What is the surface area of a sphere with a diameter of 14 inches? Give your answer in terms of pi and rounded to the nearest square inch. So we're going to have to give our answer two ways here. So again, we're looking for surface area equals 4 pi radius squared. They told us the diameter is 14 inches. So what is my radius? 7 inches. So when I substitute that in, my surface area equals 4 times pi times 7 squared. Well, I know that 7 squared is 49, so 49 times 4 is 196 pi square inches. That's one of my answers. They asked for it in terms of pi, or they also asked me to round that, or my surface area is going to equal, if I take 196 times pi, 615.75, and they asked me to round to the nearest square inch, so I'm rounding to that 5. So my surface area is approximately 616 square inches. So you need to pay attention to what is how are they asking for your answer there. All right, in your groups, questions 1 and 2 on that page, please. All right, let's go ahead and look at the answers to questions 1 and 2. On 1, they gave me a diameter, so I had to make sure that I cut that in half for my radius of 16. Substitute my 16 in for the radius, square that times 4. They told me I could leave my answer in terms of pi, so my surface area is 1024 pi millimeters square millimeters. A lot of people I saw leaving the millimeters off. They had the squared there but didn't have the millimeters in there. The units are what are being squared, not the number at the end. So make sure you got your unit of measure. On number 2, they gave me the radius. I didn't have to do any fixing there. Substitute my 100 in there. Square it times 4 is 40,000 pi square yards. So that's just the basic formula of surface area. The next part, they're going to have us apply this to real world problems, but they're not going to just come out and give us the radius. So my question here that you don't have in your book says Earth's equator is about 24,902 miles long. What is the approximate surface area of Earth round to the nearest 1,000 square miles? Well, again, the formula for surface area hasn't changed. It's still 4 pi radius squared. The problem is, do they give me the radius? No. So what is this 24,902 miles long? We talked about the equator earlier in this lesson. What do we know about the equator? Goes all the way around the Earth at its center. So what measure of a circle do we know that measures all the way around the circle? What measure do we call that? What do we call it when we're measuring around the circle? The diameter is the segment that goes through the center, but that's not a measurement of the circle. What is the measurement that goes around the outside edge of the circle? circumference. So this 24,902 is really the circumference of the Earth. So refreshing our memory, circumference is 2 pi r. So if I know the circumference is 24,902, and that equals 2 times pi times radius. Well, pi has a value. 2 obviously is a number. So I can divide both sides by 2 here. So if I take 24,902 and I divide that by 2, I get 12,451 equals pi times radius. Then I can divide both sides by pi. And I get that the radius equals 3,963.27. But because we're going to be approximating this, I'm going to round this particular one just because the number is so big to just 3,963 miles. Then I'm going to take that value to substitute over into my surface area. So my surface area is 4 times pi times 3,963 squared. So if I take 3,963 and I square it and multiply that times 4, I get 62,821,476 pi, because I still haven't calculated out pi yet. But because they want me to round, I do need to calculate that out. So I get 197,359,487.5. But again, they said round to the nearest 1,000 square miles, not thousandth. 1,000, which means I'm to the left of the decimal point. So I'm rounding to that 9 there. That's in my thousands place. Hopefully you remember ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. So my surface area is approximately 197,359,000 square miles. Now, fortunately for you, the problems in your book, they're giving you numbers that are a little bit smaller to work with than they gave me. So let's go ahead and take a look at your problem in the book. What is the surface area of a melon with a circumference of 18 inches? So again, we know circumference is 2 pi r, and we're working towards surface area is 4 pi r squared. But I need that radius to be able to make that surface area work. So I'm going to take that circumference that they gave me of 18 inches. So 18 equals 2 pi r. And only because calculators work differently, it's just easier to work this out in parts. Some of you could just divide by 2 pi. Others of you would have to put the 2 pi in parentheses. So just to make it a little simpler, I'm going to break it down into parts. So 9 equals pi times radius. So if I divide both sides by pi, so 9 divided by pi, and I'm going to round that to about 2.86 inches. And again, we're going to take that answer, substitute it over into the other formula now. So surface area is 4 pi times 2.86 squared. And they told us round your answer to the nearest 10 square inches, so we are going to have to calculate out pi. So if I take 2.86 and I square that and multiply it times 4, I get 32.4 0.7184 pi, multiply that times pi, and I get 102.78. But they said to the nearest 10 square inches. 10 is where the 0 at. That's in the tens place. So my surface area is going to be approximately 100 square inches. Because once I round, the other numbers go to 0. All right, so in your book, questions 3 and 4 as a group. All right, let's go over the answers to questions 3 and 4. So in number 3, we had a pin cushion with a circumference of 8 centimeters. And if we work our way backwards, I got a radius of approximately 1.27. Our answers could be slightly off if we rounded a little differently, so your answer should be ballpark. And I substituted that 1.27 over into my surface area formula, squared it times 4 and got 6.4516 pi, multiplied that out, got 20.26, and they asked me to round my answer to the nearest whole number. So that meant my surface area is approximately 20 square centimeters. Make sure you're getting that unit of measure in there. And then number 4, a head of lettuce with a circumference of 22 inches. So again, I got a radius of approximately 3.5 inches. Substitute that over into my surface area formula. 3.5 squared times 4 is 49. 49 times pi is 153.93. Rounded to the nearest whole number, my surface area is approximately 154 square inches.